Hey, this is Joe at graybenchelec. Welcome back to the pedal teardown series where I take apart new and interesting pedals and show you what's going on inside. Today we're doing the Wampler Tumnus Deluxe. All right, we got the Wampler Tumnus Deluxe. This is the second version of the Tumnus. The original was the smaller 1590A size. This pedal has been highly requested, so I finally got one in to take apart. The Tumnus, as you probably know, is I think it'd be fair to say, Klon derivative. The story goes that Brian breadboarded the original Klon and then modified it to his taste. And so the overall structure, like if you kind of squinted at the schematic, you'd probably say it looks a lot like a Klon. So we're expecting to still see the charge pump. We're probably still going to see that three-way filtering thing happening that's in the original Klon. We're probably going to see op amps and then hard clipping diodes as part of that overdrive circuit that lives inside that clean bypass. But there's probably significant changes to values here and there, capacitor values, resistor values, to give it a different sound or tonal quality that Brian thought was an improvement over a Klon, presumably. At least that's probably why you would make a pedal out of it. As far as features on this pedal, this is the deluxe version, so you have extra stuff. We have bass, middle, and treble, so a 3-band EQ. The top knobs here, level and gain. We have a switch in the middle that says normal on the left direction for the switch, and then hot on the right direction. And on the side we have a buffer switch. If you recall, we opened up a KTR, and while the original Klon was buffer bypass only, so that means when you disengage the pedal's not in circuit, the buffer part of the pedal is always in circuit. That was changed on the KTR, so that was for the original Klon. It was changed on the KTR to be like this, where the buffer was removable from circuit. I don't know in this case which one is which. I'd assume pushed in means the buffer is on. So the buffer is always in circuit when the button is pushed on, I presume. And when you click it out so it's extended, that means you have true bypass. We're in a 125B size enclosure here, top mounted DC and 1/4 inch input and output jacks. The foot switch is a non-latching foot switch, probably just a standard momentary single pole, single throw, which is most likely indicating it is a relay bypassing system. Appears to be powder coated, most likely silkscreen or UV printed graphics on the top here. It is marked 9-volt DC center negative here at the top for DC power input. As we know for the Klon, inside we have a charge pump which is giving us positive 18 volts and negative 9 volts. It actually ends up being a little bit less than that. It's more like positive 17, 16 volts or so. But that's the idea. And our back panel here, we have our standard logos for CE. Don't throw it in the trash. There's no lead, RoHS, and the power requirements as well. That is pretty much it for the externals. Let's go ahead and crack it open. All right, so here is the PCB assembly for the Wampler Tumnus Deluxe. So as I said earlier, this is a Klon derivative, so we're going to expect to see a host of different ICs that are going to be doing the amplifying, the distortion, and also, in this case, the 3-band EQ, making that happen as well. Going over the larger components, we have Neutrik 1/4 inch jacks. These are stereo jacks, but this is most likely just not using the ring connection for anything, or maybe just power switching on and off. Board mounted DC jack here. We do have a single pole, single throw momentary foot switch here, and it has its own little header pin connection. So if you ever have a foot switch go bad, which can happen, it's less likely with the single pole, single throw. They're more robust inside, but they do go bad. And in this case, it doesn't require any resoldering. You just disconnect this header, put in a new foot switch, and you're good to go. We do have room in the enclosure for a 9-volt battery. We have a mix of through hole and surface mount construction. The ICs here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's more on this side, 5, 6. All these ICs are surface mount, which is a little bit of a bummer for modders who like to change out your ICs, because now it's just going to be a little bit harder. You'd have to desolder the IC, and I don't know if they probably make surface mount sockets for ICs, I'd imagine, but I don't know of any, so you'd have to just solder on a new one probably, unless they make surface mount sockets, in which case then you could socket in a new IC. If you're going to do that though, keep in mind it needs to be able to run on the elevated voltages that are part of the Klon circuit. Lots of surface mount resistors and capacitors on both sides of the board. Pod values here, we have a 10K for the bass, middle, and treble, all linear pots. The level control is an audio 100K, and the gain control is a dual gang, so it has essentially two separate pots controlled by one rotation or one rotary shaft. That is a 100K dual gang linear, B100K. We are relay switched here. We have a cute little TE relay switch. Looks like 1M43. It's a 5-volt relay, presumably double pole, double throw relay. That way we're switching input and output. We have an IC down here. This is a AT Tiny 84. So that's your microcontroller that's interpreting the foot switch to turn the relays on and off. We also have some header pins here that will be used to program the microcontroller. The IC here is a TLO74, so that's a 4 op amp package. 4 TLO71 essentially is in one package, so TLO74. This is a TLO72. This one says, I'm just going to read the numbers off, 7709AC, 89M, AKC4, and 64 with an underline, and that's Texas Instruments. This one, oh yeah, it's an Atmel. And this, Texas Instruments. On the flip side, for ICs, on this side, this IC is the 7660, that's your charge pump, so that's making the simultaneous negative 9 volts and positive 18 volts. The IC here that's hidden underneath the level control is a TLO74, so another 4 op amp package. And I think this piece in here, I think this is a transistor that's probably doing the 5-volt regulation for the relay and the microcontroller, I guess. And then for through hole, we have a whole bunch of film capacitors here that are through hole. There's also surface mount capacitors, so some surface mount, some through hole. And what builders sometimes will do is, like in the single path, they'll have the film caps because it's their belief that it sounds better. And the power supply or whatever will have surface mount capacitors. I can't say for sure. I'm not tracing this pedal out because it looks like it would be a nightmare to do. And we know that it's generally a Klon. But just looking at like the mix of surface mount and film caps, I'm guessing that's what's happening. The pots are alpha. The switch here looks like a tie-way switch to me. The foot switch is an SCI. The jacks are nitric, if I didn't say that. You can see there's a little bit of glue or some sort of agent that's put on here like foam, and I think that's just to hold these metal tabs in place. These tabs are the grounding tabs for the pedal, so they're pushing up against the inside of the enclosure, and then the tabs themselves are actually soldered into the board here. You can see that, and that's how that's how the circuit here is connecting to the enclosure for the shielding purposes. So it's really how you're connecting the enclosure to ground. The potentiometers do have a little piece of foam on the back so that they don't short out the back of the potentiometers to any contact points on the board. And the dual gang pod here has a little piece of paper, it looks like. There's no through hole. Actually, there is one through hole component, this film cap, that is right under this board. It probably would have been ideal to not have any through hole components underneath this just because of the very tight clearances between the dual gang pot here and the board. Whereas like the standard right angle single gang pots, they have a decent enough gap. You never know, the layout here, the size constraints, they just had to maybe put one through hole pot in there. Switch here, just a single pole double throw, presumably. At least we have 3 lugs, maybe the other one's not being used. Can't really see what's connecting to. For anyone interested in the diodes, my guess, there's obviously no through hole diodes. Wampler did come out with a germanium version of the Tumnus that did have through hole germanium sort of vintage looking diodes, like glass package diodes. Those are obviously not on this version of the Tumnus. There is a D1 and a D2 diode hidden down here next to the indication LED. My guess is that these are the clipping diodes, assuming that it is the same arrangement as a Klon. So if you were interested in trying different diodes, these are probably the ones that need to come out and get replaced by something else. I'm not tracing out the pedal, so that may not be true, but just judging by the back-to-back nature, sitting right next to each other, and the fact that they're not around like any power stuff, like we have diodes up here that are probably for power polarity protection, and there's probably going to be diodes in this area here for the regulation or the microcontroller, although I don't see any. But yeah, we know the Klon has back-to-back diodes in that distortion circuit, and there are two D1 and D2 right there. So my guess is those are the clipping diodes, assuming it uses clipping diodes like the Klon, and those would be the ones to swap out if you wanted to try different diodes. So that's pretty much it for the Wampler Tumnus Deluxe. Let's go ahead and put it back together. So actually, I was just about to put this back together, and I noticed that the potholes on the enclosure here and the switch hole here, they're elongated. And that's interesting because the KTR we saw had rectangular and elongated holes for the pots to go through, probably for the same reason that Wampler had to do it on this enclosure, which is that the buffer switch comes out the side and then the pots come out the top, and whenever you have right angle stuff coming out, you need to figure out a way to get those in and out. So I wonder if this was two people coming to the same conclusion to solve the same problem, or if this was like an intentional little nod by Brian Wampler to Bill Finnegan and the way that they solve that same problem. So either way, it's interesting to see that the same problem caused the same solution for the KTR versus the Tumnus here with the buffer switch issue. So just a little interesting thing I saw there. All right, that was a teardown of the Wampler Tumnus Deluxe. If you have any questions or recommendations for a pedal you want to see on an upcoming teardown episode, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribing. I'm Joe from Graybench Electronics. Thank you for watching.